What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by the channel. Today's project is this barely used Husqvarna trimmer, and the problem is that it was in storage for a really long time and now it won't start. Let's see if we can find out what's wrong with it and hopefully we can fix it. In this video we repair this trimmer, however it may not be the exact repair you need to make to yours. We'll explore other options later in the video. Now we do have some information about this trimmer, but let's try and fix it as though we don't have any. Luckily, there's still some fuel in the tank from the last attempt to start it, so let's try and start it and see if we can see anything interesting. Of course, it didn't start, but the interesting thing was that the primer bulb would not fill up with any fuel, which would point to a carburetor problem. Now, before we dive into the carburetor, let's put some fuel into the throat of the carburetor and try starting it to make sure that the engine still works. Well, it starts, but it doesn't want to run off the choke. Let's pour out the fuel in the tank and see if that could be the problem. Okay, so the gas in the tank is the wrong color, so it's not good anymore. Also, the fuel filter has broken off the line, so we definitely have to clean the screen inside the carb of any debris. With the air filter already gone, we simply have to remove these two nuts and the filter base to get to the carburetor. And once we get to the carburetor, push the fuel lines off and then disconnect the throttle cable from it. The first thing we need to do is remove the top part of the carburetor where the primer bulb is. This is where the screen will be located at. And once the top is off, we can see the screen and some of the debris on it. It doesn't look as though the carburetor was ran much with the filter off the line. Now, before we clean it, let's take a look at the metering diaphragm and see if it's hardened up over time. A stiff diaphragm could explain why the primer bulb isn't working, and of course why the engine wouldn't start. After taking it off and moving it around a bit, it's not petrified, but it's lost most of its flexibility, so it needs to be replaced, otherwise it will not run very well. After cleaning the screen, we need to test it to make sure that the fuel will flow through it. To do this, we need to fill the screen with some fuel and then press down on the rocker arm on the other side of the carburetor. And unfortunately, it did not flow through it, so now we have to remove the screen with a small screwdriver. Be very careful not to damage it. Once it's out, spray some carburetor cleaner on it and let it soak in it for a while. Next, we need to remove the screw holding the rocker arm assembly and remove everything. Now be very careful and try not to lose anything, especially this little spring. If you lose the spring, it'd be easier just to buy a new carburetor. It looks like the passage is blocked where the needle valve goes, so we need to push a small wire through it to clear it. I apologize as I did that part off camera, but as you can see it's clear now, so let's put it back together. Once again, I can't stress how careful you have to be when putting the needle and rocker arm back together, so go slowly and take your time. After it's back together again, refill the filter screen with some fuel and then press the rocker arm on the other side of the carburetor, and hopefully the fuel will disappear from the screen just like this one did. Now it's time to put the carburetor back together again, with a new diaphragm of course. If you're uncomfortable doing this type of carb cleaning, then getting a replacement is always a good choice. Before reinstalling the carburetor, we need to replace the old brittle fuel lines first. The line I'm using is about 190 thousandths of an inch or 3/16, and the first cut I'll make it at a sharp angle. This will help get the line started in the hole in the tank, and then use a pair of pliers to help pull it into the tank. This is the return line, so I only need to pull about an inch into the tank. The next line, however, is the fuel filter line, so we need to pull the line out of the tank and cut the angle piece off so we can install the fuel filter. Now, if your fuel filter is in bad shape, I would consider buying a new one as they're really affordable. After the fuel lines are cut to length, it's now time to reinstall the carburetor. Attach the fuel lines first, followed by the throttle cable. Another reason why your trimmer may not be starting is that it may be worn out. The engine can wear down to a point that is on the borderline of running or not running at all. To test for this, use a compression tester, and hopefully the number is higher than 50 psi. Now it's time to replace the air filter base, the two nuts, the filter itself, and of course the cover. After putting some fuel back into the tank, we're finally going to start it now. Unfortunately, it looks like we'll need to make some adjustments using this splined carburetor tool, as it simply will not run off choke. To make things easier to see, I'm going to remove the air filter base. That way you can see what I'm about to do. Here's a good shot of the adjustment screws. The screw near the engine is the L screw, and it's to help the engine idle. The other one near the filter is the H screw, and it's for when you squeeze the trigger. To get the engine to idle, let's try turning the L screw counterclockwise about a quarter turn, and then we'll try starting it again. Well, unfortunately, it still died, so let's try turning the screw out another quarter turn, and then try starting it again. Now, once I got it to not die off of choke, I then adjusted the H screw for wide open throttle. Do not adjust the H screw for the highest engine RPM. Instead, play it safe and turn the screw out a bit more to let the engine run with a little extra fuel. This will keep the engine from running too hot and destroying the piston ring. Once I had it running just fine, I then adjusted the idle speed as it was a little bit too high. When you're done with your trimmer for the season, always run your equipment dry to avoid carburetor problems the next season. So my question to you is, have you put your equipment up for long storage without draining the gas and then having carburetor problems? I hate to say it, I'm guilty of this myself, but I'm more interested in your answer.
Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time. Please feel free to ask any questions, and I hope to see you in my next video.